Jon Jones versus Georges St. Pierre. Jon Jones is the current and two-time undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion of the world. He was also the interim champion. Jon was the youngest champion. Jon is the greatest champion. Jon has the most incredible striking. Jon has the most incredible wrestling. He's got the most incredible jiu-jitsu. Jon has the most incredible elbows. Jon has the sharpest elbows. Jon can spin around, he can fly up in the air, he can pick up his opponent, he can smash them with his incredible techniques, he can drop them on the canvas. Jon has the most amazing ground techniques once he gets his opponent on the floor. No matter how good you thought you were, no matter how good everybody thought you were, or no matter where you were, if you walked into a cage with Jon Jones, you were absolutely annihilated. Jon Jones is the greatest. It's Jon Jones's cage. Georges St. Pierre had the most amazing career. Georges St. Pierre is a two-division champion in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, having won titles in the welterweight and middleweight divisions. George is a three-time former UFC welterweight champion of the world, having won the title twice. He also won the interim title, and George came back for UFC Gold. And George came back as a bigger man. He beat Michael Bisping for the middleweight championship at UFC 217. And Georges St. Pierre, at 38 years old, wants to come back to the octagon. And he wants to come back and do something great. We saw George put on mass on his body. George was always a huge welterweight. He's a big middleweight, and George is as big as he's ever been. At 38 years old, George wants to come back and do something amazing. George is 5 foot 10 inches. Jon Jones is 6 foot 4 inches tall. And I want to ask you, the fan, how you feel about Jon Jones versus Georges St. Pierre. Jon Jones is the greatest, and Georges St. Pierre is the greatest as well. At welterweight, came back and proved that he could do amazing things at middleweight. George wants to come back and leave an absolute amazing legacy. If George could win the UFC light heavyweight title, that would end his career, and he could ride off into the sunset with the most amazing career by beating the greatest, Jon Jones. Jon Jones is unbeatable, and Jon Jones has never been beaten inside the octagon. Jon Jones has 24 wins. He has 10 knockouts. He has 6 submissions, and Jon is flawless. Inside the cage, Jon has beaten everybody, and he's not just beaten them. Jon has proved that he is leaps and bounds, light years, beyond anybody who's ever stepped into a cage. Could Georges St. Pierre go out there and prove that he's the greatest? Could he go out there and beat Jon Jones? If anybody could do it, it would be Georges St. Pierre. Georges St. Pierre has amazing takedown, and he's the man who took down Olympic freestyle wrestlers like they were nothing. And he has amazing striking as well. Could he fend off the most magnificent, the greatest, a bigger man, Jon Jones? This would be absolute amazingness. Jon Jones versus Georges St. Pierre.